Uh, yeah, making a video. Alright, I already deleted a couple of comments. They're just too stupid. So I'll just reference them vaguely. So the one asshole again wants to argue the precession of Mercury and say the theory of relativity is somehow critical to the precession of Mercury. My argument is it's not. There's nothing in the theory of relativity itself that does anything but acknowledge that the sun moves, the mass of the sun, and that explains the precession of Mercury, because the small movements in the sun, the tugs, are what's really changing the Mercury's precession, because Mercury is so close to the sun, and that you can understand that movement in the sun without any need to bend anything called space-time. You can just understand that, yes, that's one of the consequences of gravity being a two-way street, is that the sun, even though it doesn't move much, does move. Alright. And so, but you believe whatever you want. It's fine. I'm not going to argue this shit anymore. The obscure parts of relativity. And you people can't make a distinction between an event and this theoretical device used to make something happen. Okay, so we can go back to Huygens. Okay, because the other guy brought up Huygens again. And I can just point out how it's a device. It's a mathematical device. It has nothing to do with reality. Waves don't make little waves in front of them, an infinite number of little waves. It's just being used as a convenience. So now they have an excuse to turn the single slit into the double slit by using these individual waves to essentially just multiply the equation by a half, which inverted ends up being 2, which is just creating 2 photons instead of 1 photon. So now you can make them interfere with each other. It's just a device. It's dark matter. And there's a difference between understanding that there's some mechanism that does something, and these magic leprechauns that fix the math, augment it in some way. It's the difference between putting in a formula something that's real, and they've invented constants before to fix math, and then they take them out because they realize, oh yeah, it was a bogus constant. Here, let's use the real number, which will be some equation that's where it's not really a constant, and they find out it's really a variable. Now they create another formula that fixes it and now puts the real variable in, and maybe there's not that much difference, 0.9 and 0.9.8 or something kind of difference, a little tiny difference, but it's a difference, and they fix it with something real rather than synthetic. Alright, enough of that. So superior mind is way off on some other subject, so thanks, but I really just don't care about all this shit. Polarization is what because it's just, I could read some of this, but it's just, since the particle of opposite charge has a net opposite spin, then the interactions will result in opposite direction of spiral orbit. Just getting into the whole concept of charge without recognizing that charge is a consequence of spin, right there you're using the two concepts if there's a difference, and there's probably no difference between charge and spin. But what I just don't want to get into all this minutia. All right. So Hothladay and Piro both made videos. Well, Piro made a video, and then Hothladay made a response. And Piro's video has to be the worst video I've ever seen. I can't even. It would be a crime if somebody showed it to an 8th grade classroom or something as a science, as an explanation of something scientific. It's so bad that they should go to jail or be fined, because it's just so inane and mushy and silly. And then Hothladay made a response to it like it was a perfectly sensible video. I'm like, you people really are fucking insane. I can't tell you how much I wish there was somebody rational for me to have a conversation with, because you people just are not rational. Piro's video couldn't have more contradictions in the same sentence. He didn't even make second sentence to wait for his contradiction. He was contradicting himself in his own sentences. It was just... Anyway. So Hothladay. Another whatever, fine. These critiques that have the, whatever. I could say, I have said, I'm sure you are wrong about so many basic principles. No, yeah, you could say all this stuff, and I'm just saying, what's the big deal? Okay, if you say I'm wrong, why don't you demonstrate that I'm wrong instead of just playing these silly games? And wrong in principle, not wrong in semantics, but wrong in principle, wrong about something that is significant. A significant wrong. Anyway, principles are significant things. Basic principles are fundamental things. So show me a wrong in a fundamental principle. And I would expect you to retort, how, where, show me. Yeah, well, of course, and because you can't seem to do the work. Okay, fine, don't do the work. Just keep slandering me. Fine. I don't give a fuck. I mean, you're just demonstrating to, like I said, in hindsight, when all this is viewed backwardly, okay, you think you're going to come off like you did a great job? No, you didn't. And I would reference the example in this video where you assert that the inverse square law as being a straight line relation. Just so, alright, I shouldn't have made the argument the way I made it. The argument is the model, okay, of the inverse square. The model of it, the line of it, used to demonstrate gravity, is not how things move. That was the point of it. But anyway, we'll go through it. Assert the inverse square law as being straight line relation. Graph it yourself. That's the whole point. You can't graph it including reality. You can't, if you graph it including velocity, obviously, right? That's what something real would be doing if it was actually traveling down the slope, is gaining velocity. But let's all ignore that. The point is that the graph doesn't illustrate anything. If all you're going to say is, at this point, there's this much gravity. At this point, there's this much gravity. You see what I'm saying? Nothing travels at there's this much gravity at this point. And then it travels, and then there's this much gravity at this point. Nothing can travel from point A to B, that curved line. Everything travels a straight line. If I put something at the end of the solar system, and I let it go, and I give it no velocity in any other direction, it's going to take a straight line path right for the sun. It's not going to go down a curve. So my point is that this model is fundamentally broken, because it's not recognizing that there isn't any slope to reality. But again, I'm not saying I shouldn't have said it. I'll concede I shouldn't have said it the way I said it, to imply that if you graph it, it's a straight line. That was wrong. Then you would say, if indeed I did care to address it, as often you seem to conveniently miss my direct answers to your direct demands for justification of my opinion. Yeah, I've missed all of that. That's right. I don't see you in any way defend any of these mushy, vague references. You vaguely reference that there's something wrong with making experiments exact. So here you have examples where people haven't just distorted the experiment results a little bit, they've completely converted them into something completely different than the truth, and you pretend that's just being a scientist. Lying is just being a scientist. Making stuff up is just being a scientist. I don't think that is just being a scientist. Indeed, you did care to address it. You seem to conveniently miss my direct answers to your direct demands for justification. Well, if you did, I expect the answer would go something like this. What I'm saying is, well, again, you keep bringing up this what I'm saying thing, and I just don't really understand. If I said, let me clarify, I mean, what is exactly your problem, retard? I mean, if I choose different verbiage, it's okay? There's some kind of like nigger word in here. What I'm saying is, that sounds like nigger to your brain. That's just saying, well, let me say it another way. Let me try to explain it to you. That's what that's saying, you retard. You can't understand that? And you think that's some sort of illegitimate conversational technique? I mean, I'm just so sick of your obnoxious, petty bullshit. I mean, this is just so silly. You fucking wig-wearing turd. You're just a troll, for fuck's sake. What I'm saying is a violation of logic. It's not a logical thing to do to say, no. What I'm saying is, that's not a sensible thing for somebody to do. The important thing here is, what I'm saying is, well, again, you just keep saying it, right? Like, that's, you're mocking me with what? My ability to understand. You don't understand what I'm talking about, so I'll try to put it in words you might be able to understand because you're a cement head. You are incapable of just saying, yes, I was wrong about that, so it seems. Well, again, I wasn't wrong about anything previous. I am wrong to sit there and imply that if you graph this crap, the graph line will be straight. Of course, it won't be. But my argument wasn't that this graphing is necessarily a good idea, because that slope has absolutely nothing to do with anything that would ever be traveling on the slope. So anything actually in gravity would never be paying attention to your fucking slope. I mean, fuck. So anyway, and so your previous arguments about where I was wrong again, or what, and of what significance and where, again, this is all just drivel. I mean, Pirro makes the most inane, ignorant, stupid video I could possibly even imagine him making, and I can imagine him being really dumb, but he was extremely dumb. And you responded to it as if there was a coherent point in it, which is quite amazing on your part. This makes dialogue impossible. It is your arrogance. Well, I'm sorry. You're an idiot. That's what makes dialogue impossible. You say things that are just fucking silly. You'll ask me, I've already used these examples, but I mean, you'll ask me these silly questions about, well, how exactly does the smallest particle in the universe, the shape, bang into the other thing so it can possibly kinetically do blah blah. And yet you'll sit there and say it's okay if they create Huygens, and it's okay if they create dark matter, and it's okay if they describe the two-slit experiment as just a couple little humps, the single slit. It's okay if they get all that shit wrong. I mean, you're just such a fucking hypocrite, a duplicitous hypocrite. Fuck you. Jesus. Alright, so let's play some of this shit video of his. Alright, there's the Pirro one. Let's see. So we'll do Hoflade's first, and then we'll do Pirro's. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I got some work I gotta get done. Well, maybe I'll do a quick drawing, though, of what I'm talking about with the stupid, Alright, so if you were to chart the intensity of force, so let's put distance this way. So this is how you're gaining more distance. So this is the distance, right? This is the joke of this thing. This is distance here. It won't be here. You won't be traveling that as distance. And this is the force of gravity. So let's say the force of gravity is at 10. And you're going to end up with, by the inverse square law, what the strength of gravity will follow this kind of a curve. Okay? And what they do is they sort of invert that curve to create a model of gravity. Einstein's curve would be that version of it. Yeah, this version of it. Okay, so the gravity's strong here at the little point, and then it gets weaker as it goes out this way. So it's an invert of this, which is a parabola, which is really just a circle, a piece of a circle. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So the point is that at half the distance, so this is the distance. See, this is where the lie of it is, right? Because they're arguing the thing is like if they do the Einstein thing, they're saying the thing is traveling this curve. That's their argument, right? It travels this curve. If they dimple a rubber sheet or something, the object has to follow that curve. Yet this is the actual distance they're claiming. So right there you're sort of in trouble, right? So at half the distance you only have a quarter of the force, so it's this kind of thing. So the force is only 2.5 at half this distance, which is not half of this parabola's distance. Well, it could be close to it, though. Yeah, it could be close to half the parabola's distance. The argument I would be making is the thing itself is traveling this line. Okay, this is what it's doing. And it's doing it because even in this weak gravity, it's gaining velocity the whole trip. So it's going faster and faster and faster. So by the time it gets to something that might be 2.5 gravity, it's getting to it way down here. You know what I mean? So the strength of gravity is, it's compensated, its weakness is compensated for by the fact that the thing traveling will be gaining velocity as it's traveling. And so, but anyway, of course it's going to travel a straight line is the real point I'm making. This is what it's going to do. It's going to travel a straight line. It's not going to be really traveling a curve. And so when they create this fake model, it's a fake model. It's using gravity, but it's still a fake model because the real speed and trajectories aren't that of real gravity. Because the things are traveling in a fake curve. They're not traveling the direct line from the thing to them. The gravity isn't at the right angle, if you get my drift. The gravity pushing them is our gravity. And it's not illustrating that the gravity from the thing's perspective will be coming from behind it, not from the side of it tangentially or perpendicularly. So anyway, but whatever. Like I said, I'm not going to argue. I might say something now and then that's perceived as being inaccurate because I say it badly, or I used it inappropriately, and I'll concede that that might be an instance where I shouldn't have said that. If I said if you graph it, I might have said that, and that was just wrong. But I'm sure there's probably some way you can graph it where you make the distance the hypotenuse instead of the distance being, this. You make this the distance. But like I said, still, you might be able to make a straight line then, but you're going to end up with half the force at half the distance then. But anyway, I don't want to argue it. There's probably some way to graph it where I can manipulate to my purposes. But anyway, who cares? So, time codes. I must have those here somewhere. Let's see. Gotta pay my bills. Oh dear. That doesn't sound like any fun. That's the Feynman stuff. Where's the... Okay, here they are. There's the holiday notes. Alright. Sorry. A little bit disorganized. This is kind of an off day. By comparison. Really by ruler by comparison. I don't know what that means. Rely by ruler by comparison. No, I don't know. Anyway. Measuring. He had some argument about measuring in experimental conditions and all this kind of crap, like there's some kind of vagary and all this stuff, and some of these experiments are really kind of simple mechanically, and there's lots of parts to play with. They're easy to play with, manipulate, and it should be dissectable, in my opinion. And it's just that people just don't do the dissection because they're trying to defend a position, so they use they control it to verify what they're attempting to prove instead of saying, look, this is what it actually did. They selectively get the right focus, where it looks like Richard Nixon. And, even though it didn't look anything like Richard Nixon from a different focus. That kind of bullshit. Anyway. Alright, so 240. He starts saying something stupid. Somewhere around here.
So we're in Mendon, and I've thought about trying to explain this to him.
Yeah, whatever. It takes how much effort? I mean, really, making these videos. It doesn't really take that much work So I guess, if you really have something to say, why don't you just goddamn say it, all right? But this bullshit, I'm just saying this is just such bullshit. You just keep making these vague, unaccountable accusations, and you keep nitpicking. You're going to say it's not nitpicking. I'm saying by comparison to everything you're letting slide, it's insane nitpicking. I mean, it's I don't know, by comparison thing, I mean, I could talk about how messy my house is and then make a comparison to some clean house and just say, what are you, insane? I'm going to worry about somebody throwing a piece of paper in my house because I'm going to use the standards of some clean house? No. I mean, that would be nitpicking.
Mistake is one assumes that you can't look at these pictures.
I don't even know what that means. So these pictures of what? So we're on the two-slit experiment, I think. One assumes you can't look at these pictures. Why wouldn't you look at the pictures? The pictures are the results of the experiment. I'm just saying this is all so incoherent.
That in the case of singular photons released and singular electrons released, it is as Richard Feynman talks about in his lecture on the two-slit experiment.
Yeah, and I played that, and it's full of gross errors. So again, what's the point? And let's stay on one subject. Let's not play electron-photon games, okay? Let's play photon. Talk about photons. Talk about one kind of experiment at a time. As I've stated, electrons are just... It's almost silly to have any expectation where they're going to go.
About a statement about the probabilistic distributions.
Yeah, a statement that's what? Based on what? Heisenberg and a bunch of presumptions, okay? So I'm just saying there's nothing probabilistic except for the fact that the system has errors. So I'm just saying, let's say if I said that the magnetic field lines, okay, are really, little magnets lined up around the magnet, and they're in a space where they have an even amount of pull and push happening at the same time, and that's why they're stuck there. So it's because there's just as much pull as there is push, because of the way the force comes out of the... But the argument could be is that they don't quite get it perfect each time, so they're just a little bit off. So they have a 2% variance. And that 2% can create some sort of imperfect calculation. Because if they lined up just exactly the way they were supposed to, without any friction on the paper or whatever supporting them, then the photon would go in a certain direction. So that's completely understandable that nothing lines up perfectly. If I'm polishing Newton's glass and I'm getting different reflection numbers based on how I'm compressing the area that the atoms live in. I mean, the fact that you people can't even understand this simple idea that electrons can't be smashed into each other, they can only be local. There's a pressure that contains them, and they're almost like a spring to a point because they don't like each other, because they have the wrong spins. And so they're always going to be forced a certain distance away from each other, and depending on how compressed that distance is, though, it'll change subtly. There's your variance. There's your error from the expected norm. There's no big surprise in these variations. And you don't need to do... I mean, the fact that the variations are completely probabilistic in their outcomes and their effects, and these are all things that can be known, but it's not a probabilistic event. I mean, the fact that there's probabilities in the variables of the flipping of the coin doesn't mean there's anything about the flip of the coin that's in jeopardy. It's a completely mechanical thing that's going to happen. So why confuse the issue by saying probability has something to do with it? It only has something to do with describing it. It has nothing to do with the way it happened.
And those statements, because of the inaccuracies and the expected quirks of the experiment, will not be absolute. For example, if you look at the so-called band of impossibility, yeah, you actually get...
I don't even know what that is, so, The band of impossibility. Super.
The odd photon
The bands that aren't supposed to have light. Yes, you get the odd photon because the odd electron is out of sequence because it's pushed out of its condition because there's not enough space for the photons to exist in, so one of them has to bulge out. It's like if I have 10 ball bearings and I push on them, some of them will start to push out of alignment. So there'll always be a first one that pushes out, and then a second one that pushes out a little more, and the line gets a little crooked, and shit like that'll happen. But the way it's going to, the fact that it will happen a certain way, in terms of a certain range of error here, one of them's not going to fly to Mars. We know what the limitations are of how that irregularity is going to manifest itself. But the truth is, it has a true mechanical cause. One of them is the weakest link, and the weakest link will give first. Fact.
Where there is supposed to be total cancellation. But you understand the accuracy in actually defining that point is an infinitesimal, you would understand, but in trying to get it through to amend them.
This is just this kind of shots, like somehow I'm not understanding what. I've known pointing out that there's all kinds of bleed from the brights, right? That they're technically supposed to be the same size as the dark bands, but clearly the light bleeds into the dark bands. Clearly. So why are you making this argument, and why are you making these aspersions to what I understand, you fucking cunt? I mean, it's just, you just constantly do this shit. It's just goddamn, it's so rude and lazy. You're obnoxious. You're just a troll. Alright, I don't think he gets to much else here, but anyway, we'll run through the notes real quick. Okay, so he kind of implies that all reductionism ends up with fractals or something. If you're trying to explain the rubber band, you end up explaining little rubber bands, and then you explain little rubber bands holding the little rubber band. And that's not really what all reductionism resorts to. That's what physics has turned into in a lot of respects, is silly games like that. Huygens, dark matter, little fake things to just keep the game rolling. But most of the time, like even our own brain, you can figure out that yes, we can analogize it to just a bunch of software and bits of storage and identity based on what is processed in, it's stored, and that storage becomes your identity. Well, not too fucking you end up seeing through the dirt your brain collects. Is that a good enough way to say it? I mean, it's not much more complicated than that, right? Your brain collects a bunch of dirt through your life, little silly pieces of experience, plops them on the glass, and then your brain tries to see through the glass. Now it's I look at the world through the dirty glass. Not complicated. Clearly can be reduced to without resorting to rubber bandism. And here I've given you a theory of function of foundational mechanics. I guess I have to call mine foundational mechanics, I guess, because we can't use quantum mechanics because that means fairies and woo-woo. And I've given you one that has just so simple a system, exactly as Feynman, if you want to keep mentioning his name. I'm going to play all the Feynman videos. The relevant clips. I couldn't give you the simpler checkerboard that Feynman described. I've handed it to you, and you're just nitpicking and pretending I didn't do that, and it's really annoying. Yeah, I just hate your fucking guts. Anyway.
And as you suggest, reality is reality, and if that's what reality is, then it's fine. But let's be open and honest about giving up any notion of physicality to ourselves.
So why are the two things at all related? Physicality, like physics, to ourselves. Were you under the delusion that there was something other than bits of energy that made you up, little swirly bits of shit? I mean, what's the difference what it's made out of? Does that really matter? Does that change the fact that we exist and that we have functions and we have peripherals connected and all that kind of stuff? I mean, you want to reduce it to some sort of computer that means nothing. When in fact, no, it's computers with pretty fancy peripherals. Feelings, sensations, these are pretty fancy peripherals and are significant in their meaning and substance. And you're just pretending they're nothing. And we're just here to be computers because that's what evolution made, was survival machines. I mean, your philosophy, your reductionism is disgusting. It's grotesque. You know, you just don't take any account for the fact that no, it's not chocolate bars all the way down. It's not bricks all the way down. It's something all the way up, idiot. It gets more complicated. Stuff is made out of stupid, meaningless bricks. That doesn't make the stuff meaningless and stupid, you stupid fuck. Brain is a significant fucking thing. It's not just goo. It's not just cells. It's not just green slime. You know, it just isn't. Yes, it has all the biological identity of green slime, but clearly this arrangement matters. This construction matters. The fact that it's doing the electrical thing and all this little stuff makes it matter. It's doing something different than green slime. Quite obviously.
The whole notion of physicality is an illusion.
Whatever. So then he says something about being weird, Bell's inequality, non-something. But anyway, he defends the whole spooky action at a distance crap. So, you know, oh yeah, well, it's, you know, maybe their local thing doesn't matter and everybody's getting their instructions from the Martians. I mean, you might as well just say that. You might as well just say the universe has a will and, you know, it's got power. You know, go ahead. I just don't understand. What's the point? You goddamn know the evidence for spooky action is obscure, obtuse, very thin evidence. Why even bother with it until they can demonstrate with something like real hard evidence? And the fact that you don't seem to think there's any such thing as hard evidence is also really irritating. There's soft evidence and hard evidence. The evidence of bent space-time is weak evidence. Fact. Alright, at the same level, no. At the same level, there, no. I don't know. Yeah, no. I shouldn't have taken bad notes, but I did. It's too bad. I'll just jump ahead. It doesn't really matter. There's just no point in having anything. It's saying, we just might as well just exchange insults, because that's all you people have on your minds. Piro's video is just such a pile of shit.
And that the notion of free will that others talk about is a useful fiction for a DNA molecule.
There we go. So a useful fiction. Well, whatever. I guess that's the end of conversation for me. You know, as soon as you say it's a useful fiction, then you're not doing science. So, yeah, fuck it. So I don't really think he says anything else. It's just a gibberish video. Just an absolute sack of shit. I'm implying that he's agreeable with some sort of compatibilistic willpower-y thing or something. I don't know. It's all such a pile of crap. Like the will is something other than a byproduct of you learning how to play the piano. Your will is constructed like any of your other talents. So your ability to walk, your ability to talk, my ability to move my fingers like this. And my will's made out of the same bullshit that gave me this. The same bullshit that makes me fart a certain way. The same bullshit that makes my eyes blink a certain way. Same bullshit that makes my penis rise. It has absolutely nothing to do with anything beyond that. It's just another reflex. Your will is just another fucking reflex. It doesn't mean a goddamn thing. It has no such thing as power or choice or any of this bullshit. So why do you just keep playing this wishy-washy, mishy-mushy game? And I wish you people just... I don't know why you people have to keep mixing philosophy with science, but yeah, of course that's Piro's agenda. And you're just being duped right into it. Piro's talking religion, and now you're going to talk religion, and that's all it's coming down to. These are not even close to the same subjects. The double slit experiment has absolutely nothing to do with this nonsense that we have time choices, and we can pick which time we wish to go into, and we can have all kinds of... We're three-dimensional objects in five-dimensional universe, like a two-dimensional object in a three-dimensional universe. Well, the two-dimensional object is still a two-dimensional object, only has two-dimensional function, so it still has to somehow travel through the three dimensions in the two-dimensional manner. So it's still fucked in the ass, because it can only do that based on its two-dimensional brain. This is such a crock of shit. Good night, Gracie. So anyway, let's play some of this because it was just horrible.
And
the most annoying thing is he does, you know, first he does this live room, so it does some of this voice cancellation shit, which is kind of just adds to the annoyingness of the audio. But he has this stupid fucking headset mic, and he's just got it too damn close to his fucking face, and you just hear all these face sounds. I hate that shit.
Hi, Lede. And I'm going to share this.
I want to share.
Sort of, I'll do this. I don't really have this planned out. I'll try to leave a link. Video. I guess I'm behind on your videos, Hi, Lede, but I watch Skepticism in Physics. And, so I have a few things. So, you know, you said about how you thought maybe they would come around to Gary's system in some sense, which is funny considering what you've said to him otherwise, but I get it.
Oh yeah, you get that. I don't really get it personally. Okay, so this whole play, let's all just play a game. I mean, people are just so full of shit, but again, you're just never going to acknowledge it. So I can play Feynman forever saying, well, the stuff goes through the single slit and it just goes blob over there. I can play all that shit going on forever. I can play a modern physicist right now, right today, implying that that's the reality. That there's something magical about two slits, and they're the ones that do this interference pattern thing. And this doesn't bother you people. It's perfectly okay. It doesn't. We don't have to talk about the truth. It has nothing to do with science. I mean, I point out the 3-bar thing about the 2-slit experiment. It seems quite obvious that the width is 2 brights and a dark. I have an explanation for that too. Doesn't mean anything to you people, and you're going to insult my knowledge and my comprehension. But you're not going to demonstrate how I'm wrong. It's just disgusting.
Right, I think I get it. It's like you feel some sympathy with his conclusion and his doggedness to go forward even though he's ass backwards to a clown.
Right, so let's get to Piro's ass backwards to a clown. Let's get to your bullshit here. This is the amazing, amazing drawing.
Don Quixote or something.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
Retard. Wait till you see how bad this is.
I just want to find out what it is that you think. Now, Gary, as far as I'm concerned, can't really figure out how to engage with that. But I happen to know that you have paid close attention to what these experiments and things.
He obviously hasn't paid any attention, all right? He still thinks that somehow the 2-slit experiment is the important experiment. That everything you need to know about diffraction is happening in the single slit. But let's just pretend the 2-slit is the magic. Well, look, it is the magic in the sense that if you understand that these are that the double slit experiment isn't about the bar pattern, okay, as the physicists keep making it. It's not about the bar pattern. It's about the fact that the bar pattern has a different phase. The phase is different. That's it.
Say not that I think you have every detail right. I'm not saying I do.
There you are. You're constantly saying you do. You're saying we scientists, we know, we did this, we proven, we. It's the most proven theory in the history. We. Fuck you. You arrogant pig.
I do know compared to Gary that you understand some of the issues. So.
Okay, right. So again, we'll just pretend that that's the truth, right? Which it completely can be demonstrated not to be. If Hofladay has the guts to actually make a 2-slit video, then we can actually point out what an idiot he is, right? Because he doesn't seem to understand shit about it. I don't think he has any understanding of Huygens. and what the math is doing. I mean, I've pointed out these things. He hasn't made any video, so clearly he doesn't want to talk about it. Yet he's supposed to be more knowledgeable. Sure he is.
First of all, what we're going from is the quantitative measurements. Now,
quantitative measurements. I mean, again, this is just such... Do you understand what versus a qualitative measurement, a quantitative measurement? No, sorry. No.
Granted, from the theory, we built these experiments to test the theory, and some weird results came out. But the experiment...
They weren't built to test the theory. This is another pile of crap. Young did an experiment, way before anybody was even talking quantum mechanics. So, yeah, this is how you do history? Oh, yeah, great.
The experiment itself is an apparatus, and it's not just a 2-slit. It is 1 slit, it's 5 slits, it's various obstacles. They've done, as you know, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's about apertures and diffraction, and the fact that in the 2-slit experiment, the diffraction patterns are overlapped, because there's 2 of them. Because there's 4 surfaces.
Right.
I mean, unlike a normal aperture, where there's 1 surface going around.
And I think your issue about what it says about some sort of determinism is interesting. Right.
Just get to it now.
But one thing that's clear from the experiments is that
this is going to take forever. He first has to do his bad
it's
drawing.
Weird.
It's weird. Okay, so that's just so cute. You know, the scientists who just say, "Oh, it's weird. We'll just leave it at that. We won't." Yeah, just call it weird. Yeah, it's a scientific term.
Whatever it is, it's weird, right? Gary's system's weird. Any explanation?
Yeah, whatever. Again, my system's weird how? Oh, because it answers all the questions with something rational. Oh, I see. Yeah, that would be weird on planet Earth. It's not a religious theory. No gods involved, no dark matter involved, no bent anything, none of this magic space, no extra dimensions. Yeah, it's not a good enough religion.
Is weird. Now, I think you know why they say that the... oh, that's a really shitty line there. Because my tablet, it's hard to draw on the tablet.
Yeah,
so
right.
let's see what that goes. Oh, maybe it should be
Too
like
bad
this.
you bought one then.
You know why they say it looks like some phenomena goes through both. Now, the only...
No, why they say... No, I don't... I never knew why they did that, okay? No, that's... Yeah, because it's just not really rational. Single photon. So we're saying a single photon sends out such a wide wave that it can go through both of these slits. The wide wave goes through both of the slits and then interferes. And the photon just sits around here somewhere and floats over here while its waves are doing all this work. The photon waits to find out what the right answer is. It just sits over here and it says, okay, where am I supposed to go? Oh, probabilistically, you belong right there. Yeah. No, that didn't occur to me as being a reasonable explanation.
The paradox is if that phenomenon is a photon, and it seems like a photon because it makes a little tiny speck one at a time, right? So it seems like the photon. No, but another way of looking at it is, okay, you have a wavefront.
Right, so this isn't accurate, right? Photons, well, single photon isn't a wavefront. So first you have to explain how a single photon is a wavefront.
Right? It comes here, both slits make, a diffraction pattern.
Well, again, so he's talking about how somebody doesn't understand the real gist of the experiment. And the real gist is they've done the experiment with single photons. So explanations should always be applicable to single photons. It's already been reduced to that. Okay, so that's the standard from which you argue. You never argue from multiple photons doing interference or something because it's already been proven it has nothing to do with photons interfering with partner photons. It's clearly been demonstrated that it has to do with photons, single photons, somehow waving through 2 slits. So you're talking about how other people don't understand the experiment and you've just drawn it in this silly, stupid, ignorant manner that has absolutely nothing to do with what people already know the experiment can and cannot do.
And if it was a water wave, so far so good, no surprises. You'd expect that from a wavefront, right?
Well, a water wave front. Again, and why does water waves do this? Why do water waves do this? Because there's tension in water. Water molecules stick to each other. And as they go through this barrier, they have friction on these sides of this barrier. And so this water ends up moving much slower. And that's what creates the wave, is the center of water keeps on going, and it creates all this tension in the wave because of the friction. So that's how it creates the new waves. There's no mechanism to explain how photons would do that, or that the photon's wavefront is somehow having friction problems getting through the slits. The magic big giant wave that the photon has that's going through both the slits is now going to have some sort of problem getting through the slits. And the center of the little photon wave is going to go faster than the edges of the photon wave. And all that makes a ton of sense, right? No, it doesn't make any at all.
For some reason, this phenomena altogether makes just one speck at a time. Okay, that's the weird thing. But I see it like static electricity. Yeah, there is some sort of a connection in this wavefront, and then when the bubble pops and it makes a little photon mark, it only has enough energy to make one somehow. So
he's saying photons are now statically electrically jumping to the other spot because it's the fake wave cut a path for it or something. No evidence of this gigantic electrical potential. I mean, let's understand the slit materials. I mean, this screen is really, really, really far away from these surfaces. I don't think that's how photons are getting there.
As far as I'm concerned, that is a mechanism.
Oh, la-di-da. Okay, so that's all he needs to know. Just give me the results and I'll suck them right up. Just make up some shit. That's a mechanism. That explains it. Yes, the single photon creates a huge wavefront. The wavefront gets frictioned and splits in half, and we have two waves, and then the photon's still waiting back here, and then wherever the waves say it should go, it zaps its way there. That is the explanation. That's all we need to know. That's science.
Right. Because I'm not saying there's no mechanism, like you said. I agree, that would be crazy. I'm just saying the mechanism isn't necessarily something that fits with our just our common sense. It's allowed to seem weird.
No, it's allowed to be made up. So he's going to make up a little wave photon. A photon has just a little wave in front of it, just a little wavelet-ton.
Look, the Earth being around is weird.
I don't know. Does that seem weird to you? Sphere, gravity? Nah, it doesn't seem very weird to me.
The fact that the Earth is round, it looks pretty fucking flat when the way we live it.
I don't even know if that's true. It looks pretty lumpy around here, buddy.
I'm going crazy here. Okay. This is Inkscape, in case anybody's curious.
Yeah, I'm really... It's fucking 3-year-old.
So it's allowed to be a little bit strange. And it is a little bit strange, and we haven't explained it, but it does...
It's allowed to be, and we haven't done this, and we don't have to do that, because we like having our options open, so we can just inject a unicorn anytime we feel like rubbing unicorns. Yeah. I need it for my willpower theory. I have to keep the universe all fucked up so I can do my willpower thing.
Count as a mechanism. Now, I think will is going to turn out to be sort of a fundamental. I believe, like you think certain things are supposed to be sensible and concrete, in this abstract sense of concrete. And I kind of have that feeling about will. I think that whatever the force is behind will, it's got to have something to do with choice and freedom of motion. Now, freedom of motion doesn't...
Yeah, freedom of motion doesn't mean freedom of motion. This is what... It's going to actually say that. Watch this.
Doesn't mean you're unconstrained.
Yeah, so freedom of motion doesn't mean you have freedom. Yeah, no.
Doesn't necessarily even mean that you are a
Yeah, we have a choice, but we just don't have any choices in the choice pile. We have a choice pile, but there's no choices in it. Yeah, that's the way to say it. Okay.
like. Doesn't mean you're not determined. It doesn't mean that you.
Doesn't mean that you're not determined. So you have freedom of movement, yet you're not determined by any non-freeing determinism.
In any sense, aren't subject to the laws of nature. It's more like, well, you kind of are one of the laws of nature. Doesn't mean anything is without a mechanism. But you can have freedom of motion. You know, it's like if
you can have freedom of motion. Well, anyway, he's going to create these like fake dimensions and draw time. Look at this. This is time doing all this stuff over here, and that somehow you make some choice to look at these other time thingies, and somehow your brain, like a photon, figures out that, oh, maybe it's better if I go down this time tree, or some kind of crap like that has absolutely nothing to do with anything rational or reasonable. I'm going to play a little.
Determined, every point is sort of already, exists in some sense. It can't.
Yeah, the place you didn't go already exists. The footsteps you didn't make already exist somewhere. Yeah, sure they do.
Create or destroy that 3D space, but it has a lot of room to move and be moved around, right?
Yeah, so again, he's saying two-dimensional object in three-dimensional space somehow can navigate the three-dimensional space with some sort of knowledge of the three-dimensional space, and it really can't. All it has is its two-dimensional knowledge. All it knows how to do is play the piano. If I take it to some other universe where there's, 9,000 keys on the piano, it's not going to be able to play shit, is it? No, it's not.
And I think that those of us that believe in free will.
So there, he says he believes in free will, and then later on he'll say, well, we know there's no free will. I mean, it's just disgusting.
Wheels are allowed to also have a kind of compatibilism that...
You don't need compatibilism if you believe in free will, idiot. You only have to invent compatibilism if you're worried that there's no free will.
Willpower can be determined in that sense by...
Yes, willpower, whatever the fuck that is. My will has power. It's like fart power. It's... what the fuck? Yes. There's power in your behavior, and the things that generate your behavior can be cause things to happen because of the causes that cause those causes. Fuck you.
It's a mechanism. And if there's a branching, then we have possibly the ability to branch because we're in these so-called lesser dimensions.
Right, so we have possibilities to take branches that we don't know anything about cognitively, but the magic forces will know what's in our best interest and will have us make decisions that we don't know anything about because they know better than us. The photons know. Fuck you. This is just so inane. But anyway, what's the point of doing two-slit and philosophy videos? Gross.
Something there in a conceptual existence, even if it's just space, empty of non-space, but full of space.
There we go. Empty of non-space, but full of space. Now, I don't have to go any further, right? Even if there's empty space, full of not full of non-space, but full of space. Good night. I really can't. There's just no point. And this asshole will mock my intelligence. It's just so rude. It's so obnoxious. It just shouldn't be allowed. It really should be a crime for somebody who makes a video as silly as this video he made to critique or criticize anyone's intelligence, including the average 5-year-old. Eating his poo. And the fact that you people keep eating this shit, you're just fucking goddamn poo eaters. I wonder what Vic, we'll see, maybe right, today's Sunday, isn't it? Yeah, I gotta go to work though. I wonder if Vic is going to say something like, Piero, I'm all on your side and such, but that was the dumbest motherfucking science video I ever saw in my life, because it really was the most ignorant pile of crap. Anyway, who cares? There's nobody rational here. There's no hope. No hope for the poor planet Earth, because all the peoples is ignorant cunts. I think Einstein said that. So, till next time.